Welcome to the Surviving to Thriving podcast, where we're dedicated to helping you break free from chronic inflammation and get your life back. I'm Dr. Rachel Yeager, naturopathic doctor and medical intuitive, and the founder of the Surviving to Thriving method of chronic illness recovery. Join me as we uncover strategies for overcoming health challenges and restoring your physical, mental, emotional, and soul health. Together, let's embark on a journey to thriving. Hello, everyone. I'm here today with Luisa Anderson. She's one of my good friends, and she's a podcaster and a soul realignment practitioner. And we connect on so many levels, so we're going to have so much fun today. We're going to talk about the role that grounding using your soul or your spirit, the role that has in healing, and just our discovery stories into when we feel like we connected to that side of ourselves. So it's really huge for me with healing, and just in general, it's been huge for both of us with living our most aligned, authentic lives, which I think is a really big part of us feeling healthy. And then we can talk about frequencies and how we can discharge stress, how we can really fully be our most authentic selves in a way that helps clear out any negative things or any energy that we don't want inhabiting our space. And then we'll see what else comes up as we have our conversation, because we always talk about random stuff. Yeah. Do you want to start us off, Luisa? So for me, like, my journey has been like a slow, gradual, years long coming into discovering my spirituality and how that plays a part in who I am. But you have a cool story, and just overall, like, what draws you to it. So if you want to share a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. So I can start sharing. So I had a spiritual awakening and 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, in the last 2 to 3 years, and it has just changed the trajectory of my life. But the main thing that happened with that was I started to feel this need to be outside. Like, my backyard became my home. And then when I got bored from that, I started going to the park like every single day. A day could not go by where I didn't go to the park. I didn't move my body. And one day I was at my usual park doing my usual walk. And I just had this like feeling that it was so deep that I just could not ignore, that I wanted to hug a tree.
I love that.
And you know what? I did. I hugged the tree. And that energy, I can still remember that moment because there's just nothing else like it. It was like I was whole. I was just connected. It was this part of me that I just had never experienced anything like that. And then the next day, I wanted to take my shoes off and walk on the grass instead of walking the cement trail. And of course, I did just that too. And yeah, nothing has been the same. That's how I started grounding. That was my little story. How was yours?
That's amazing. Yeah, I think for me, first of all, that's amazing because I feel like I've heard that before. Like, you start feeling the energy from the trees when you're really tuned in, and nature is such a great outlet for that and like an easy way to connect for people who are having a hard time, I feel like. So that's super cool. So thank you for sharing that. I think I got really sick while I was in med school, and that's when I was like, I feel like something's missing, both in my healing journey and in just like how I was carrying myself in my day to day. And so I started working with some energy practitioners because Portland, Oregon is a great place to work with energy practitioners. And I saw people who did energetic acupuncture, different types of shamanism, and like practice Native American tribal shamanism, which I've always been really drawn to. I think it's really cool. And I slowly started to realize that I did feel like a spark and like a connection, like my soul was a drop in the ocean water of something bigger. And I remember going on my first shamanic journey where I feel like things actually happened. And I know a lot of people think of shamanic as like being evil spirits or something. It's not at all. It's just acknowledging that you have a soul and just how your soul is relating to you and your life. And I remember having this crazy new feeling and this expansiveness inside me. And it was like I was suddenly having a new sense. Like, touching, seeing, smelling. I don't know. This was a new sense. And ever since then, that's something I, depending on the day and how grounded I feel, I can more or less tap into. But yeah, it stayed ever since then. But I've definitely had to cultivate it and work a lot with it and try to like really nourish that part of myself to keep
I'm
up.
glad you mentioned that though, because I think that gets lost. I think sometimes when we talk about grounding, I don't want to say for us, but like for me, who I'm so in this and it's just like a normal way of life. But I think it can be lost, like how much you need to continue, like just continue, like it needs to become a part of your
Yeah.
routine.
Yeah.
Because then you disconnect, right? You're like disconnected from that energy.
Totally. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that one of the hardest things to go through when it comes to chronic inflammation and chronic illness is combating your mind and navigating the mental part of things. And it's so easy to let yourself get swept under and be in that fight or flight state all the time. And I think what a lot of people are waiting for, which I used to do this, and so it's something I'm very familiar with, is you're waiting for the symptoms to pass and for your health to just get better and for you to physically improve your health so that you can then feel better because you're anxious and you're worried and you're in fight or flight because of your health. So you're like, if only the trigger is just gone, then things will go back to normal and I'll be good. And so, I need to go, go, go and problem solve and push my way through to being on the other side of these problems so that I can feel mentally stable and things feel good. And what happens with chronic inflammation is you're peeling the onion. And so things feel better and then they feel worse. And they feel better and then they feel worse. And there's always going to be challenges that come up at some point. Like we're going to get a cold or a flu or something. And so I think it's so important to be able to stay grounded and feel like you're nice and tethered and stable and you can weather all this while you go through it instead of just waiting for or, all the chaos to be gone for you to feel good and stable again. And so for me, grounding has been huge for that. And I know everyone has different meanings for grounding. And in this sense, I think for me, it's that sinking into your inner knowing and feeling connected to something outside yourself that's timeless and stable and secure and brings you perspective so that I'm able to keep a really good perspective while symptoms flare or something comes up. So I'm curious with you, like share, Lisa, if you have anything that you do to ground with mental health or your physical health or anything like that.
Yeah. So for me, I'll start with this. Grounding is reconnecting like my body and my energy to the stabilizing frequency of the earth. But I can articulate that now. At the time when I first started grounding, I didn't realize that's what was happening. What that does for me is it stabilizes me in the way, first and foremost, mentally, like my mental health. After I started grounding, it was just night and day. And in my opinion and in my experience, I believe that is because when I connected to the earth's energy, to Mother Earth's energy, then I started to experience life and understand that life was cyclical. And I think once I was able to understand that, grounding became so essential and so helpful because I could now mentally weather any storm. Instead of waiting for things to pass, I understood one, that it was going to pass. So I would feel better or I would feel worse, but then I would feel better or I would feel
Right.
worse, you know? So it was really helpful for me in that way. It really just allowed me to understand that, hey, the best thing that I can do is be level enough so that when things are thrown my way, that I can manage them, that I can emotionally and mentally be prepared to understand and be able to continuously allow myself the ability to know really that, hey, this is temporary.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
And I love that you mentioned the Earth's frequency because there's the Schumann resonance, the Earth frequency, that if we're talking about actual frequencies, that's a frequency our body's used to. And so it feels really natural and calming. And I think there's a reason that even research shows that birds singing or listening to crickets or whatever, all these nature sounds, these are all calming frequencies if you look at what frequency they're actually vibrating at. And I think there's a reason that our brains love that. Like the nature frequencies are so calming, even to our physical systems.
Yeah, I agree. I think without being aware of that, it can sound a little we're
True.
a little crazy, but I love that you share that because I think the notion, the awareness can really help put it into perspective.
Yeah, 100%. I think too, I think with the grounding, everyone has their own beliefs with spirituality or religion, and this can be applied in any way. But I do feel like the cyclical part that you were talking about, I feel like for me personally, a big part of feeling at ease in the current and the present is it feels true to me that my soul has lived multiple lives and that I'm going to live more lives after this. And so knowing that my soul is learning, I'm on a journey, and what feels like a big thing to me, because it's the one life my brain right now knows, is actually just like a thread in a huge journey. And so that always brings me perspective. I think it's like looking at the stars at night and you feel so small. I think it's the same energy that comes with that whenever I think of I did choose to be here and I'm here for a reason and this isn't my only life. Like that brings me peace actually.
Yeah, for me too. I have the same exact belief that this is one life and I've had many lives before. And it levels me, kind of the way that you said, because for me, I tend to look at it as a learning experience most of the time. Is
Yes.
whenever, especially when going through hard times, I'll be like, yes, this is a lesson. I'm gonna get through this lesson.
And love
My
that.
soul came here to learn this lesson. And it can be really difficult, at least for me in my own experience. It was really difficult before I had my awakening to really process things like that. But when I can understand that I am one part, like one tiny part of this really big something bigger than me, it feels better. It allows me to mentally navigate through with a little bit less negativity, a little lighter.
I love that. Yeah. I love that a lot. And I think expanding on that topic of the soul, I feel like that's another thing that's been super healing is even just my awareness of my soul and that this is a physical body that I'm in this lifetime. And I'm going to have physical parts of my health that are really important because I am in a physical body. But also, I have a soul and like I need to nourish my soul health the same way that I also need to nourish my mental health or my brain. And so for me, with the soul health, I think looking at it as we'll go on a walk we'll be like, this is for our mental health, but what are we doing every day for our soul health? And so I think that really helped give me permission at a time when I was still in fight or flight and felt like I needed to keep searching for the answers. That helped give me permission to slow down and read a book or watch Love is Blind or something like that. Cause that was part of taking care of my soul because my soul needed rest in that moment. But yeah, what do you think about the concept of looking at our soul as part of our whole being?
So it's part of the way I live my life. I'm a soul realignment
That's your
practitioner.
thing. Yeah.
That's my thing. And one of the things that I do when I do soul readings, right, is I go back and I try to understand what energies are still with us from past lives that are affecting our current life. So that's really important to me, the way that I view life in general, because the way that I see it and the way that I approach it on a day-to-day basis is I know that there were lifetimes in which I experienced something that is affecting the things that I'm going through now. So, for example, if it's my health, any aspect of my health, in the physical 3D world, in my physical body, then I usually want to understand what did that have to do with my soul? what did my soul experience in a different lifetime that we came here to heal? And while that may not mean necessarily healing like the physical health condition that I have, sometimes it's like the mental health aspect of it that carries that same energy. And so my soul health for me, when I talked about like living life and looking at things as like a lesson and how I can get through it, the way that I think about it is this is for my soul. This is not for 3D, Luisa. This is not for my body.
Powerful.
It's my soul. That is what I'm doing it for. And it pushes my ego aside and it pushes all of the worldly things aside and allows me to really focus on what matters.
I love that. And I feel like one of the biggest revelations for me, for the longest time, I was pinging back and forth between physical health is the priority or soul, spiritual, this other reality that is harder to actually see, that being the most influential. And I feel like the answer is always like everything in moderation and everything's a gray space. And so I feel like the answer is both. Like we're in a physical body and we have plenty of attention spent on our physical health in our society, but not a lot of attention looking at our soul health. And I do feel that imbalances can come from either place. If we're really missing certain nutrients, that can make us feel low and affect our mood. And eventually, I think that carries over and affects our spirit because we get so down and we stop doing the things we love. But conversely, if we have an imbalance and we're out of energetic alignment in our soul, then that feeds over and everything in our reality is energy. Everything's vibrating at its own frequency around us. And so that energy impacts our physical being. And so I think we can have diseases show up from both. And I don't think we're looking at the soul energy side as planting the seeds for some of the things that show up later in our physical body.
Yeah. You're so obviously spot on. I feel the same way. Yeah, I have this big thing. It's like mind, body, and soul, and they all need to be in balance in order for me personally to be in balance. And I know that this is true for a lot of us. We just don't look at it that way because, like you said, I think we tend to separate the soul and the spirit. You didn't say this part, but like put it into the religion box when
Yeah.
that's not what we're saying. We're saying is whatever way that comes through for you, you need to take care of that aspect of it too. Because if one of those parts is imbalanced, then the whole thing's imbalanced because the frequency, and this is what I love about the work that I do, is understanding because I'll get a scenario of something that someone experienced in a past life. And then I have to understand the energetic frequency of how that's showing up in their life today because it's not necessarily the same situation. If it was 10 lifetimes ago, you didn't bully someone on the computer because we weren't all sitting in front of a computer. But what is the energetic quality of that? And so that is so important in everything that we do and in everything that we feel. So that vibration that you allow to carry in to seep into one part, whether it's your mind, your body, then the other aspects are affected too. Your soul, for me, I personally feel like a lot of the lessons that I'm learning in this lifetime are very much related to my past lives, like a lot. So I think that's why I put my soul first for the most part, is because I understand that a lot of this the energetic quality of a lot of the experiences I'm having was because I didn't take care of my soul in past lives.
That's really profound. Yeah. I think for me, a lot of it, and a lot of the people I work with, I see this in people with chronic inflammation all the time, is growing up doing people pleasing tendencies or feeling like it's your job to care for other people and, how other people feel and react to things, thinking that you need to influence that. And so I think that even things like that we don't think about, we're like, oh, that's just part of our personality or behavior. I think that is coming from soul energy and that's impacting our physical health. Because if other people come first, then what energetic vibration is that? What signal is that sending to our body? So I think that stuff too, things we tie to our personalities is really important too.
Yeah, I absolutely agree because I think it keeps us stuck in a sort of cycle where we're not prioritizing ourselves, right? I can speak to this from experience. Like my awakening had to shake me up for that. There was everything and everyone that I put before me. And so it started energetically, in hindsight, of course, started all energetically. It began to seep. It was like my soul felt like it was dying. I was doing nothing for myself. I wasn't journaling. I wasn't taking care of my physical health. I wasn't taking care of what I ate. I wasn't even taking care of just the everyday stuff. Like, how do I want to look? How do I want to feel? And it started that way for me. And I feel like once my soul felt like it was just dying because we came here and we were like 30 years in and we were getting nothing, no joy out of the experience. I feel like it was really like, okay, now look at other parts of your life. And by the time I was paying attention to my mind and my body, it was doing the same exact thing that I had been doing to my soul, which was just like crushing it and not taking it into account.
Wow.
And I was 80 something pounds overweight. And when I finally realized and put it all together, it was like, that's why I needed to have that spiritual awakening. I was completely lost to the notion that I was a whole, that my mind, body, and soul needed to be connected. Otherwise, there was always a missing piece. There were times in my life where I was physically healthy, eating great, all the right things, all the right nutrients. I didn't have inflammation. I didn't. And then there was another part of my life where I was going to therapy. I was doing all of the things for my mental health to be well. And there was always something that just was missing. I feel the way that I do now, completely whole.
That makes sense. And I think that's just such a common thing to focus on each thing at once. And something I think is really interesting is it seems that if we improve one of these areas, our brain mental health, or our physical health, or our soul spiritual health, like once we up level that, then we have more space to pull up the other areas. But we're bouncing between one and another. Cause I
Mhm.
think it's hard to have really connected, deep soul health when you're in 10 out of 10 pain every day. Like that level of physical pain is so distracting. And it's like Maslow's hierarchy. Like it's hard to get past our basic needs and be able to dive into that stuff when we're having such a foundational physical onslaught against our well being every day. And so it seems like once we get the physical symptoms under control, and then we have more attention to look at the mental health and we can move that up a step. And then we have space to look at our soul spirit health and move that up a step. And then because we've up leveled our mental health and our soul spirit health, then we're more regulated and we have way more space to look at our physical health and help improve that some more. So I feel like it's this three-legged system and each level you can keep walking up, but you've got to pull up the other levels as you go.
Yeah, you just described the last 2.5, 3 years of my life.
Same for me too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been it. And the beautiful part of it, I lived in fight or flight mode for most of my life just because I had a very traumatic childhood. And the most difficult part for me, which I didn't actually get to choose because of my awakening, I was just prompted into it. Here you go. But the most difficult time, even the times that I had tried before that, was getting started. And then the consistency that is required to be able to maintain that new level that I've gotten to, because it does require making big adjustments. And they don't have to be made like right now, these big leaps. But I think that until you start, you don't understand or see that they're not going to. start, you're not going to make big leaps. You're going to take little steps. And when you look back, you're going to be like, that was a big leap. But yeah, I think that's such an important part of being empowered to be able to continue to do things like grounding, to be able to do the mental health work, to be able to do the physical body work that is necessary to get to that next level and be able to deal with the difficulties of our health because they arise. We all experience them. Obviously, not all to the same extent because chronic illness is not something everyone has. I think if we can at least start.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. And I think for people starting out, it can be such a helpful reminder that healing is not always pleasant. And people talk about the dark night of the soul. It's like the going to therapy. You're doing therapy for every part of yourself. And it can be intense and it can be really uncomfortable. And I think moving through that gives us skills for how to sit with discomfort and how to sit with parts of ourselves and how to be okay looking at all parts of ourselves and as a whole person, taking a really holistic view of ourselves and being okay with that and working on things. And I think it does require a certain level of openness to be able to open yourself up to feel those emotions and process those things. And I feel like it all boils down in some regard to self love. If we have enough self love, we can power through this hard stuff. And sometimes we start out with not a lot of self love. And if we can have support from other people or even just enough oomph from ourselves to take one step, I feel like that grows even as the hardship might grow temporarily. Is like we really start to trust ourselves and really love ourselves enough to push through the discomfort because we want what's on the other side so badly.
Yeah. And I think energetically that when you start to do that, you attract the things, the experiences, and the people who are going to help you in that journey to indulge more in that self love and
Agreed.
grow and heal.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm racking my brain thinking of what would be helpful tips for someone who's just starting. I'm curious if you feel like there's any ways you could share that someone who's just maybe they're going through chronic inflammation or fatigue or having some uncomfortable stuff going on and wanting to start bringing in the grounding element or connect to their soul spirit.
I would say the simplest way to start without taking a big leap, and this depends on everyone's experience, right? But walking barefoot in my house, that has been a little bit of a game changer. And sitting down on the ground, I prefer to do it on grass, but if you can sit on the ground, even if it is inside or as close to the ground as possible, and just place your hand in your heart and set the intention of feeling grounded. And I think it'll also help you identify start to identify at least what feeling grounded means for you.
I love that. Yeah. And I feel like that physical contact with the earth can be so helpful. And for me, I like to imagine, because I truly believe this, that the earth is this alive, almost like a sentient being, and it wants the best for us. Like it has great intentions for us. And for me, since I'm such a visual person, imagining that I had tree roots coming down from the soles of my feet, going down, anchoring in toward the center of the earth. Not just that, but then also feeling the energy coming back up. I think once I was able to feel the energy coming back up from the earth and just imagine it, like I didn't have to feel it at first, you're just visualizing it. And I think that fostered a lot of connection, like my energy flowing down, earth's energy flowing back up in. And that really helps with feeling part of something bigger when it feels like you don't know where to start. I think that's really cool to
Yeah,
think
I
about
love
that.
that. You should do a meditation.
Yes, I love that. One of the meditations that I used to do a lot was as I would breathe out my carbon dioxide, imagining the trees breathe, like intaking that, inhaling that, and then the trees breathing out the oxygen that I was breathing in. And it's just helps with that connection. I think the connection is the first part of feeling that grounded feeling.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's the strongest because that's what I became addicted to was that connection.
Yeah,
Feel that again.
Yes, yes. And I would meditate, and after having a lot of time spent clearing my mind at first, because it doesn't come naturally at first, you really have to try. But over time, being able to let that quiet come in, I felt like I was just lost, like, in a good way. I was part of a big ocean, like a big sea of things, and I didn't feel that personal, strong identity of self that I feel when I'm just living my day to day, going about my activities in a day, and I think that was a huge way to feel part of something bigger as well.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's important. I think that's such an important part of like the soul part is understanding that you are part of something bigger and that
Yeah.
what we do does matter. How you handle it, how you look at it, how you choose to move forward, it does matter because that's what's going to make the difference or not.
Yes, that's all determining what energy you're putting out. Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much, Louisa. For anyone who's interested in learning more about their soul health and all the energetic part that could be involved in their chronic healing, if they're having any symptoms or just want to dive into this, I can definitely direct people your way. And what's a good way for them to keep tabs and keep learning?
Yeah. My Instagram handle is Flying Upstream Podcast. You can check me out there, follow there, and learn some cool stuff as well.
Awesome. We'll link the Flying Upstream podcast handle in the show notes below. And thank you so much for joining. I hope everyone enjoyed this because we did. We love chatting. And we'll probably be seeing Louisa again.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I love these conversations with you. So, anytime.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Surviving to Thriving podcast. I hope you found inspiration and valuable insights to support your journey towards better health and happiness. Remember, each health journey is unique. This podcast is not medical advice, and it's essential to consult with your healthcare provider before making any changes. If you'd like to schedule a complimentary consultation with me, I would love to talk with you. Please go to drrachelyeager.com/schedule.